Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session of Courageous Leadership Academy Live. If you're new to this channel, my name is Dr. Kelly Waltman, and on this channel, we focus on taking the fear out of feedback, helping people have better communication, helping leaders and teams thrive, and really just promoting courageous leadership. And so today, my guest is Mark Delaney, and let me just tell you, you all are in for a real treat. You know those people that you come across in your life who they just inspire you from the moment that you meet them. From the very first moment, they just inspire you because they keep dropping these nuggets of wisdom or these pieces of knowledge that just make you pause and they just kind of blow your mind. Well, Mark is one of those people for me, even though we haven't known each other very long. Just from the very moment that I met him, I just was inspired. And I think he's going to be that kind of person for you as well. So just a brief bio for Mark. He is a purpose and life mentor. He is driven to help mission-minded people gain power to live out their purpose and make a great impact. How inspiring is that? He and his wife, Adina, developed a coaching program called the Purpose Mastermind. The program has inspired people all over the world to boldly and confidently finish the sentence, "My purpose is." And so today we're going to be talking about the power of purpose, how it can help you be a better person and a better leader. So without further ado, let me bring Mark into the session.
Hey,
Hi,
Kelly.
Mark. Hi, welcome.
It's good to be with you.
Thank you. So is there anything more that you would like to share about yourself, about your work, anything that you want to share with folks?
There's a lot to be said. We could just sit here and tell stories all day. I love my basic driving thing within me is that every single human has a great purpose, and they can know it, and they can be set free from anything that tells them they can't do it. So that's the driving force within me, is helping people find their purpose, clarify it, and then just be set free, like released from prison to go do it with all of their life.
I love that. See, you're already starting with just these nuggets. I love the word nugget. Some people pick on me for that, but with these nuggets of just, I don't know, just inspiration. I love it. So, what does that mean? We talk about helping people find their purpose. What does that mean to find your purpose?
I clarify and define most things using pictures, analogies, and whatnot. I would say purpose to the human is the same as what a keel is to a sailboat. I've never been on a sailboat before, but they look very impressive. But the keel is the long, thin structure at the bottom of the sailboat that no one ever sees. It extends deep into the water. No one ever sees the keel. We see the amazing picture of what's above the surface. But that keel does two things. One, it enables the people on board to actually go in a direction. If you didn't have a keel, literally that boat, I don't care how fancy it is, it'd be like a floating beach ball in the water. Like it might look great, but it's not deciding where it's going. And so that's the first thing that purpose does for a human, is it gives us the ability to go in a direction instead of just living our life by chance. And the second thing the keel does is it prevents the sailboat from capsizing. Winds and waves will determine that without a keel, at some point, that boat will capsize. And this is how it is with our life. If we don't have our purpose, winds and waves are coming at some point. If we have our purpose, we can ride through it, and it might be difficult. But there's a huge difference between going through a difficult season and standing through it versus hitting a difficult season and capsizing. Huge difference. So that's what purpose is to me. It's the same for a human that a keel is to the sailboat.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's when you said it's like the keel to a sailboat. And I thought, what the heck is he talking about? So I'm so glad you described and explained that because I've never heard that term before. So that was something that I learned today. So I appreciate that.
It's so interesting that you say that, because the things most important in life are very simple, but very counterintuitive. Very counterintuitive. Like no one ever talks about the keel. You
No.
never look at a beautiful lake or ocean and there's sailboats. People are like, wow, those people have an amazing keel, I can tell.
Right.
You never see it. And oftentimes what causes people's life to hit a place of destruction or breakdown, it's not what you see. It's what no one's ever seen. And so that's what's interesting in my work is I'm trying to help people with the invisible part of their life that shows up in every part of their life.
That's powerful because, I read a lot and I think a lot on those experiences that have shaped us as humans and as people, that we often maybe don't think about, right? But they've been part of what has made us who we are and have shaped us for better or for worse. That's part of our package deal. But yeah, I think so often when we try to move forward with something, we're not thinking about or addressing those pieces of ourselves. And so that's a beautiful way to put that and to describe that.
Yeah. And the good news is that invisible stuff that we are really missing, then the invisible thing that's missing can really hurt us. Good news is it's not hard with a little bit of help to create heal. It's not hard to make the simple shift. For most people, frankly, and in our work, we find this consistent basis that people literally just need one conversation oftentimes to have a real shift in life. But we don't see what's missing in our life. Someone else can see it in a second. It's not difficult. There was a young man I taught at a university about 2 months ago as a guest lecturer. And afterward, a student came to me and he said, so I'm struggling with something. I'm trying to read 20 books a month, and I'm wondering if it's okay if one of them is a comic book. And after I picked myself up because I fainted, I said, why are you reading 20 books a month? And he's like, well, I want to grow. And I said,
Wow.
then quit reading. If you want to grow, quit reading and get a job. Like, get a job.
Yeah.
You are already getting educated. You are in school. You have assignments, books to read consistently. If you want to grow, go get a job for 10, 15 hours a week. Work with human beings. Learn how to work with a human. You will grow. So, but it's that simple. Oftentimes we just strive at things in life, and the thing that we're missing is glaringly obvious to just about anyone if we would just dare expose ourselves a little bit for someone else to speak into our life.
Yeah.
The good news for him is he was vulnerable enough to just ask a question.
Right.
Most people don't dare ask questions to anybody.
Right.
We just assume that we're on our sailboat and this sail looks amazing and the wind's blowing through my hair and I'm great. Like,
yeah.
And so we live to project our image. But yeah, with one conversation, people's lives can really be changed. But there's two major deterrents to whether or not a human can have these life-altering conversations. One is, do we have the kind of people in our life to have these conversations with? We're very isolated. And the second thing is, even if I do have those people, am I vulnerable enough to have a conversation?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that young man, the fact that he, after class, just went up to a stranger and said, I have this question, is wonderful. That's
Yes.
the kind of human behavior that causes someone to be in a pattern of growth and development.
Right. Yeah, it's so I had two thoughts that came to mind as you're saying that. One, it's, I say this all the time when I'm teaching, speaking of the classroom setting, and my students right now are getting ready to work on their final paper, their big paper for the semester. And I just told them the other night, I said, please do not wait to the last minute and try to write this all in one shot, because you will not write a good paper. I said, I encourage you to finish a couple days early and get some fresh eyes on it. Have somebody that you trust in your life to read this paper for you, because you are so in it. You're so in it, you can't see a glaring typo, a mistake where maybe something could be better. And so that I think that's a really great analogy for what you're saying is we get so in it into our own stuff and our own lives and our own goals and all of it that, what's something that's so glaringly obvious, we can't see because we're too deep in it. We need those fresh eyes, that fresh perspective. And then it's like, oh yeah.
Let's face it, though. Let's face it. Nobody wants fresh eyes on them.
This is true. Yeah.
You don't want it.
Right. Well, that's the other thing that I was thinking. I listened to your podcast, and I forget which episode it was, but you mentioned that, and very similar idea, that having that vulnerability to ask for help. That too often we don't want to ask for help until we think we've got it all. And I'm going to botch exactly how you said this, but we want to have it all figured out first before we go to somebody, which is really counter to the whole point, So being willing to be vulnerable and say, I need help figuring this out. That's where the good stuff happens. But it is all about vulnerability. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And asking for help is when you have no answers. Matter of fact, you're so far from the answer, you don't even know how to ask the question.
Right.
That's when you know you're a vulnerable person and you're really on a right track. When you are able to say, I don't even know how to explain how I feel right now. I don't even know what question to ask. Like, that's brilliant. Mm-hmm. When a human being can do that, there are multiple steps ahead in life, but that's a difficult thing. I think in terms of help, something in all of us says, I must not need help. If I need help, I'm failing. I must not need help.
Yes.
And so we live a long time like that. And here's the great deception is, the longer we live that way, the moment that we realize, okay, I need help, is also the same moment that we think I'm helpless. And as soon as I'm helpless, it doesn't matter how much I need help. If I'm helpless, I probably am not going to seek it out.
Right.
I'm going to look for some way to drown my sorrows, but I won't have the guts to face them, because as soon as I decide I'm helpless, I'm not going to get help.
Yeah. And I think that is a huge obstacle for so many people in leadership roles or leaders in general, this idea of, I need to have all the answers. I have to have it all figured out. And I think so many people are afraid. I mean, I think we're all afraid, you're right, in just our general lives to show some of that vulnerability. I think particularly for leaders, they feel, yes, I'm a failure. If I don't have it all figured out, if I can't tell my team everything that needs to happen, then I'm incompetent. And I agree with you. I tell people all the time, no, that's, you're not supposed to have all the answers. You're supposed to shepherd your team to come together, and showing that vulnerability is huge. That's courageous.
I for way too long as an adult, I never asked for help. I just didn't. I never really thought I knew what I was doing as a leader. So you would never hear me say, people, I really got this. Because I never felt that way.
Right.
But you would also never hear me say to someone, you know what, I need help with this. Now, I've changed. And now I'm like, if I struggle with 2 days on something, like, I'm looking for the friend. Who's the friend that's the expert in this? Who excels at this? I'm going to call him or take him to coffee and say, hey, I want to have a conversation about this. And what's interesting to me, two things. One is how quickly someone else can help me with what I could beat myself over the head with for weeks. It's so easy. It takes no work.
Right.
And the second thing, if I recall what it is, the second thing that really surprised me is when I began to be the kind of man that would ask other people for advice, they respected me more. And I was like, wait, aren't you supposed to think you're better than me? Like, on the contrary, I was shocked. There was 2 different people I went to for advice on something with business. And the conversation ended with them asking for me to go and do business with their business with some of my content. And I was like, well, That's so counterintuitive. Like, you're supposed to be the guy with all the answers, and then someone wants you to come speak to their team, right? It's not true.
Mm-hmm.
The more we try to have all the answers, we come across in a way to people that people really don't want anything to do with us. And that certainly goes with the teams that we lead. If we walk into that boardroom and there's the team assembled, and I either just pretend I have it all together, I pretend I have all the right answers, people see right through it. And it's
Absolutely.
very uninspiring. It's
Yes.
very uninspiring. It sends a lot of wrong messages to the team. The leader that can sit back in the chair and be like, I don't know. What do you guys think? To even be able to be vulnerable enough to say, that area is a weakness for me. I'm not good at that. How can you guys help with that? When a leader I'll say it this way, when a leader has nothing to prove, they have so much to give.
Yeah.
But as long as we have something to prove and we have to project an image, like, people just they don't even want to be around us.
Right.
But
Yeah, because you're right. Yeah, people see through that. I say all the time, I preach vulnerability and authenticity, and because you're right, they will see through that. And not only, when you're asking people for advice, are you showing that vulnerability, being genuine and authentic? But yeah, you're showing them that you value them, that you value their opinion and what they have to bring to the table. And you're right, when we as leaders come into the room and act as if we have to know it all and tell everybody how we know it all, that leaves no room for them to be engaged and to bring themselves into the picture and to feel valued. And I don't think people often realize the disservice they're doing to their team and to those relationships by coming across that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. A leader is the guy or a lady that leads in courage. But you're not necessarily at all the smartest person in the room. That's even necessary. You don't have all the ideas. That's not necessary. You're not the one coming up with the next move. I mean, when a leader is capable of being vulnerable, they expose themselves not to embarrassment or, oh my gosh, he doesn't have it all together. The vulnerable leader becomes exposed to the admiration of other people. People respect, you said the word authentic. People respect that. And it can't be overstated that the person who lives with something to prove, like, people have to know, I want them to think this about me, I want them to think I have it all together. It is glaring. It screams at the world. I mean, it is so loud, and it does anything but cause people to say, you know what, I want to be around that person. I want to work for that person. It does the opposite. They're just like, I think every person has a chip, and you decide if you have it on your shoulder or in your hand. If you got something to prove, you live with a chip on your shoulder, and everyone sees it.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, oh, I can't offend this guy. I can't be careful what I say about this around this person. Or you live with a chip in your hand, representing that, you know what? I've got nothing to prove, but how can I help?
Right.
And so vulnerability is a great topic. I love that topic.
Yeah, likewise. I think we could probably talk about just vulnerability and authenticity probably all day.
Yeah. Yes.
So, shifting gears just a little bit and thinking about, and I think you kind of hinted to this a little bit, but how does defining your purpose, finding clarity around purpose, how does that help with decision making?
When you don't, the question of purpose, I talked to someone recently and I brought it up, and here's what they said in an honest moment. They said, I can't talk about that. It makes me want to scream. The reality is there's these deep questions within us. Our why, what is my purpose? We all have that inside of us. We want to have something inside of us that feels alive and moved to action in all that we do. And when we don't have something inside of us that moves us, then we have no choice to find something outside of us that moves us. And it's not a good trade-off. I would look at it like this, that the human is born into the middle of a vast forest, and there's trees everywhere. And from every tree hangs all these shiny objects saying, buy this, become that, go here, become this, get this job, get this title. And that sounds wonderful. Oh, options are everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also daunting that options are everywhere. Which one do I choose? And so we can end up going from tree to tree to tree to tree, chasing that next thing, looking for something outside of us to make us feel alive on the inside of us. But that's not how it works. Purpose is something on the inside of us that determines how we see everything outside of us. Mm. So if I have my purpose, go back to the forest, imagine there is this simple dirt path that leads through this forest to a place of legacy, impact, our life making a difference. Purpose is having a dirt path that no matter how dense the forest gets, or even how dark it gets, it's not hard to walk on dirt. But if you don't have your purpose, you're in the middle of this forest, and every tree is saying, you know what? If you have what's hanging from my tree, you're going to have a great life. But multiply that by 10,000. And you're always constantly searching for this thing outside of you. A person who has their purpose has a dirt path. And they experience some of these things on the trees in life. It's not all evil or bad.
Right,
it's not
right.
wrong to have this vacation. It's not wrong to get this thing. But you're not chasing it to make you feel alive. Your purpose makes you be alive. And so I think when a person knows their purpose, they start living their life instead of searching for their life. And the difference is huge. It's like if I don't know my purpose, I can feel like my life is a constant swinging and missing, that I'm missing it. I'm missing it. I'm missing it. I'm making decisions. I try this job and it's not making me feel alive. So I chose the wrong job. So I'll try this job and it's not making me feel alive. And so I chose the wrong job. And so there's two things. Whenever we feel purposeless in life, there's two things that we tend to blame. If we're married, we blame our spouse. That's got to be the reason why. If I feel useless, it's their fault. The second thing we tend to blame is our occupation. If my life feels purposeless, it's my occupation's fault. And so if I don't have my purpose from within me, I blame everything outside of me. And it sends me on this futile hunt in this vast forest with multitudes of options. And the truth is that none of those options are going to make me feel purposeful. Because purpose is not something outside of you that you partake of. Purpose is something on the inside of you that you give to your world and everything that you do.
Wow. I always feel like I need to just take a moment and digest what you've said before I can ask you a follow-up question, because that's really powerful.
I would like to draw pictures. I wish I could draw pictures. I love pictures and visuals. I've got a whole story I do with the forest and bushes and trees.
Oh, geez. Yeah. I wish we could do a whiteboard.
It's fun stuff. Just recently, I went through our coaching program with a group of about 20 men. And on the first day, I just asked an open-ended question to all the men in the room. What brings you here? I'm always fascinated by that, because any kind of human being that's willing to sit on a round table and discuss the topic of purpose is my kind of human. Like it's much easier to talk about cheese and Netflix, but someone let's talk about purpose. I said, so what brings you here? And a man raised his hand, 60 years old. And he said, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a pilot. Dreamed of being a pilot. My parents couldn't afford education for me. And then I found out I could get into the Army, and the GI Bill would pay for my education. And then partway through, the GI Bill changed. And so that fell through. And he said, with such a depth of emptiness, he said, so now here I am, 60 years old, wondering if I missed it.
Wow.
That's why it's so critical to know our purpose, because there is nothing more deflating in life than when every day you feel like you're in a baseball game and you came up to bat and you swung and missed, and then you go to bed. And the next day you came up to bat and you swung and missed and you went to bed. And it's so deflating. And multiply that by years.
Yeah.
You know what you stop doing? You stop swinging altogether.
Mm-hmm.
The human just starts sitting in the dugout because they're like, I've missed my chance. And we get into this in the mastermind. Most people have not missed it. They've mislabeled it.
Mm.
He didn't miss it in life because he didn't become a pilot. The problem for him is he decided that the answer to who he is supposed to be in life is a pilot.
Mm.
Like, why does this is in the mastermind, we talk about 4 confusing mindsets. And one of them is this, that there's one thing I'm supposed to do with my life, and I have to figure it out. And why do we think this way? Why does the human think this way?
Right.
Maybe it's because when a kid's in school, we constantly ask them, what are you going to do?
Yep.
And what's the answer supposed to be? An occupation.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yeah. And, it's funny you say it, because I don't know why. I think you're right that's probably at the root of it. And I think it's Marie Forleo talks about how she actually struggled for the opposite reason, because everybody was supposed to have their one thing, right? And she always wanted to do a million things. And that's always been me too. I've always deep down felt like I was an educator at heart. That has always been consistent throughout my entire life. I've always wanted to be an educator, a teacher. But what that has looked like for me and how that has manifested has been vastly different throughout my entire career. And I think that's a fantastic point, that we do tend to have this drilled into us from a very young age. What do you want to be when you grow up? What are you going to do? And you're right, it's supposed to be this occupation. And when we don't know, we can't figure it out. Yeah, we feel like that is our life's purpose. And if we can't figure it out, if we don't get to do it, then it was all wasted, which is incredibly sad.
It's so limiting.
Yeah.
It's so limiting. When you think that there's this one thing, like, how do you know what the one thing is?
Right.
and anything you do is going to involve struggle. So when the struggle comes, do you say, I think I chose the wrong thing? So you try something else and there's a struggle there. So you say, well, I chose the wrong thing.
Right.
No, the problem was you thought there was one thing. Who told you there was one?
Right.
I imagine a little baby born. And the baby is 2 weeks old, and here comes a family get together for everyone to see this baby. And imagine someone chiming in, and there's like 10 adults around this little baby, and someone chimes in and says, wow, so precious. Imagine what he could be when he grows up. Imagine every adult in the room beginning to chime in and say, yes, an engineer, maybe a lawyer, maybe a carpenter. Well, wait a second. The answer to what a human being can be, the answer is an occupation?
Right.
I mean, if that's my child, I want to look around the room and say, wait, what?
Right.
You are whittling down the answer to what this human can be, and the answer is an occupation. So we end up putting tremendous pressure on ourselves with what that choice is, that what we do. And then we ask our occupation to do something it can't do. Occupations will never bring us purpose. But if we have purpose, we can take it to our occupation.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Occupations do not give us purpose. But if we have purpose, I say this all the time. Listen, if you don't have purpose, you can try 1,000 jobs and none of them will work for you. You'll just feel like, well, this is dumb. Right. But if you have purpose, you can try 1,000 different jobs and like 800 of them will be just fine.
Right.
Because you're not asking the job to give you something that you're supposed to bring to it.
Oh, that's awesome.
The difference in that, and we're getting the leadership there. Because we don't tend to run our businesses with much of a purpose-driven mentality. And we think that our workers are going to be happy working for us because we give them bagels on Friday. Like, no one cares. Like, we don't. I'm very inspired right now. There's a dentist that went through the Purpose Mastermind, and he clarified his purpose. And I'll tell you some of his story because it helps to answer some questions we've gotten into. As a dentist, he's had a lot of success, but he's also kind of just felt like he's missing it. Mm. And so we went through this mastermind, and he realized he's not missing it. He was looking at it in a way that made him think he's missing it. And so he was able to get just fired up again about what he's doing in clarifying that purpose, and how his occupation is one really good way that he can use that purpose boldly. But now he's like, I want you to take my people through this. Mm. He's like, I want to give them this gift. I'm like, yes. You see, most people, I mentioned earlier, the things most important in life are invisible. They're simple, invisible, counterintuitive. It's the keel. No one sees it. How do we usually try to inspire our employees? We want to give them gifts like bagels or some little bonus, or we try to do things to get them to work faster, work harder. But we don't do anything to build them as a human.
Right.
Like to inspire the human.
Right.
And here's this guy who's able to see, wait a second. I went through these conversations about purpose. I found my purpose and it fired me up for work. And now he's like, I want to give this to my people. We're not going to talk at all about work. We're not going to talk about systems and processes and how to work more efficiently. We're going to talk about the human. And when the human spirit is awakened, guess what the human does? They work faster. They work harder.
Right. Yep.
Because they bring purpose to it.
Yep.
So, anyway, that gets me fired up.
Yeah. Well, and that energy is contagious. That's for sure. So I want to revisit something when you mentioned struggle. I remember either hearing you say something about this or reading something of yours, the concept of the opportunity of struggle. And I think, we all struggle in a normal year. We all have, our situations. Certainly that has been a very common theme of this year. So talk to us a little bit about what that means, the opportunity of struggle.
Struggle has become a bad thing in our culture before this year. It's wrong to struggle. That's how people tend to feel. Mm-hmm. So struggle, as soon as I have any kind of problem, I see it as a threat. And as soon as I see it that way, then I'm probably going to do something to number one, maybe just hide it. Like I want to hide struggle. Or I need to fight it like crazy and make it go away. But oftentimes the way we fight something, we break things we don't want to break, like people. Struggle is the normal rhythm of life. It is our greatest advantage in life. It's how we grow. It's even Struggle is the trail of breadcrumbs to the success and life that we really, really want. But the way we look at struggle is that, oh my gosh, I shouldn't struggle. Like struggle, this can't be me. When the human being becomes willing to struggle, they're unstoppable. They're unstoppable. Something interesting we do in the Purpose Mastermind that helps people learn to face struggle. I give people a surprise assignment in the first or second meeting. I tell them, you know the story in your life you're afraid to tell? That thing that happened to you, that thing you did, you got 6 days to tell it.
Oh boy. I can only imagine how people react.
You know, it is. I've got goosebumps right now just because of how different people's lives become as soon as they have that conversation. See, if I hide my struggle, I think I'm hiding this dirty rock. It's actually a gold nugget, as you like to say. It's a nugget.
It is a nugget.
But I gotta work on that struggle to get the gold out of it.
Right.
But if I hide my struggle, I'll give some stories. One is a young man who came to the first meeting, 19 years old. He's a giggle box, the kind of man that uses humor constantly in his life, which is not a good thing. This is the kind of man that all he wants to do is use humor. He doesn't want anything serious brought up.
Right.
All he knows how to do, that's the only emotion he wants to mess with. Everything is cute and dorky and silly. And he came to that first meeting as a group of like 4 guys, and he had that same heart set. He was like, whatever, And then I gave that assignment. He came back the second week and he had a whole different posture. He wasn't giggling. He wasn't silly. I looked at him and I said, you do your homework? And he said, yeah. I said, how'd it feel? He said, it was really awkward. He said, but as soon as I started telling my story, I saw my whole life differently. And then he just started talking, and the rest of us were just kind of spellbound because no one in this room had ever heard this young man say anything serious in his life.
Wow. He
said, my grandma was the only person in the world I would have real conversations with. She died a year ago. He said, I went to the funeral, but I couldn't get myself to go to the grave. He said, last week, after I told my story, I knew it was time to go to the grave. And he talks about this experience he had at the grave. And then he kept talking. He said, and think about this next statement. He said, my dad has never been proud of me. Now, the normal human being man will never utter such words until they're 50 years old and everything has crashed and burned around their life. And yet he sat there at 19 years old and uttered these words. And the people in that room, we were very quickly and simply able to say to him, that your life and your future is not dependent upon what your dad thinks of you. Here's the deal. When a human being can honestly face the biggest struggle of their life, they can face anything. But this may be the most difficult thing for any human to do is dare to ever face our life's biggest struggle. But if you can face your biggest struggle, like everything else is easy.
Right.
In the shocking thing, and I learned this in my own personal life, is that when we face, I didn't say fix our life's biggest struggle, just face our life's biggest struggle. It is amazing the opportunity it brings. Because we talk about the invisible things. Most of us don't have a keel of purpose under our life. We have a box of burden under our life. We have this box. It's in a dark closet in the deepest corner of our life, and it's always there. And no one sees the box, but everyone sees the results of the box. I can hide that box as best as I want to, but I always know it's there. And the fact that I know it's there, it messes with me. Mm-hmm. It messes with all my conversations. It messes with my leadership. And maybe no one knows, but I know. And the good news is, if people will have the guts one time to go to that dark closet and go to that dark corner and pull out that box, and it feels like the worst possible thing to do, to open the lid of it. The good news is, and we don't see this until it happens, as soon as you open the lid, light shines in the darkness. Just by opening the lid.
Right.
And most people don't need to fix their problems. They don't need to get rehearsed and like figured out. We don't have to have these lengthy conversations with all these people from 10 years ago. It's oftentimes just one conversation of taking something that we thought we buried, but we actually planted. And when you plant something, it grows. Mm-hmm. But with one conversation, you can take that nasty weed and pull it up by its roots, and it's dead. It's just dead.
Yeah, but I've learned from my garden in my backyard, if you ignore the weeds, they will continue to grow and spread. Yeah. You know, bringing a little bit of levity, but yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's everything you've said. I is just so profound, and yeah, we think that we can just ignore it, and if we just ignore it, then it will go away, or we can pretend it doesn't exist, but that really does not do any good whatsoever. Because you're right, it's always there.
My lifelong struggle was with weight. Lifelong struggle, probably since 2 days old, and it was something I was never willing to be honest about. Never. But I'm telling you, about 2 years ago, I just had one conversation, and I was honest about it for the first time. I opened that closet door, and I was like, and I did not know how much it would change my life by simply being willing to face my life's biggest struggle.
Wow.
It is one of the strongest messages that I proclaim to anybody I can get in front of, is you don't have to fix your life. You don't have to fix anything that happened to you. You don't have to undo anything that you did. But having the courage to face our life's biggest struggle, it changes everything. When I became honest about me and my life's biggest struggle, I did it somewhat openly. I got a closed group on Facebook with about 10 or 12 people, and I said, you know, I'm going to tell you guys every day how much I weigh, and more importantly, I'm going to tell you why I weigh what I weigh. And the answer wasn't, I like hot dogs and potatoes. No, that's not it. It was just my honest story. It was just my honest story. And so there were people in that group that were following my story. And I'll tell one of them. One of them was one of my sisters. And she was following my story. We get along well. She lives in Indiana, a ways away from me. We get along well. Don't necessarily talk about deep stuff, but she was watching my story. And in my story, she saw her own story. Now we fill in the blanks differently.
Sure.
But one thing I learned in my life when I became honest about my weight problems. Number one, it's a weight problem. And as I look around, there are so many ways of being overweight. There's so many ways of being overweight. So she called me one day and she said, she brought up something from her past, and it was kind of surprising. It was very personal and something I thought she would discuss with our sister, not me, but she brought it up to me. And I just listened. I didn't have much to say. And then she kept telling more of her story. And she explained 2 very traumatic things that happened to her when she was a little girl that I never knew. And it's so interesting. When the conversation began, there again, this is just one vulnerable conversation. When that conversation began, she was asking why she is such a failure in this area of her life. And then she said these 2 things that happened to her when she was such an innocent young girl. And I was like, you can see this differently.
Right.
And she began to. And now, quite frankly, all she had to do to see it differently was talk about it for once. And so one thing that came out of her life was that in that time in her life, when so much was going on, she developed a really severe stuttering habit. It's one way it manifested itself in her life. So now she's in her young 50s. Listen, vulnerability exposes you to all the opportunity that your struggles afford you. She sent me a video message. It's still on my phone. I'll never forget it. She sent me a message and she said, I never talk about this, but it's time for me to stop stuttering. She's in her 50s and she's been stuttering severely since she was a young girl.
Wow.
And I taught her a lesson that I learned from facing my own life. After spending many years of saying to myself, I have to lose weight to be free. I have to lose weight to be the man I'm designed to be. I have to lose weight before I can live with purpose. I realized that was the wrong narrative the whole time.
Right.
I can be free. And when a person becomes free, they lose weight. But losing weight to be free is impossible.
Right.
So I found freedom. And freedom came when I realized I never needed to wake up again saying, I need to lose weight.
Right.
I don't say that anymore. And I do lose weight. I've lost in the last couple of years about 90 pounds.
Wow.
But it's not because I'm trying to lose weight. It's because I'm living my life with freedom.
Right.
And so when she sent me that video, it's time for me to stop stuttering, I knew exactly what to say to her. I just called her and I said, you don't need to stop stuttering. Every bit as much as I don't want to lose weight. My life is not going to hinge on if I lose weight, nor is your life going to hinge on if you stop stuttering.
Right.
So I finished the story. Probably 6 weeks later on Facebook, a alert came up that my sister was on Facebook Live, which surprised me because she's never done that. And I assumed maybe she's videotaping something. But I clicked on it, and there she is in her home with her phone right in front of her face. And she's giving a 3-minute bold message to the world that no matter what's happening with COVID, every single one of us can bring our best light to the world. 3 minutes.
Wow.
And she did it one time.
That's beautiful.
Now, it wouldn't have mattered if she did stutter.
Sure. Right.
It wouldn't have mattered.
Right.
And that's why she did the video, because it doesn't matter if she stutters.
Right.
What matters is she has a message to give.
Yeah.
And her struggles don't get to hold hostage her message to the world.
Right.
So, long answer to your question. when the human being, this is why I compel people to face their biggest life failure, because when you face that, it'll change your life. You'll be like, wait a second. How come that ugly thing I've been hiding has become an opportunity? And if you turn your biggest struggle into an opportunity, you'll use every struggle as an opportunity. And that's a superpower.
Right. Right.
Absolute superpower.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. One other thing that I would like to ask, and then we can see if there's anything else that you'd like to share. And I'm trying to remember the exact quote that you shared when we were on that one networking call, and you talked about unmet expectations.
Mm.
Can you share a little bit about your perspective and the concept of unmet expectations and how that relates to everything we're talking about?
Yeah. We do a lot of marriage counseling and premarital counseling, and unmet expectations are a slow poison that we ingest into our relationship. And we do the same thing with our life, though, not just our relationships, but our very life. That when we look at our life and we have this feeling of, this isn't what I expected, it causes such a deep disappointment that it erodes away our ability to just enjoy life and enjoy people. We can't enjoy walking in a park. We can't enjoy a simple drink with a friend. We can't enjoy anything because an unmet expectation. Imagine going to some random restaurant. You're in a hurry. You don't care what you eat. It's not a fancy restaurant. You know that you're spending $7. You're just getting what you expect. You're not disappointed. This is what it is.
Right.
But if someone builds up this expectation, let's switch to a movie, and someone says, this movie is the best movie I've ever seen. It will inspire every little bit of your DNA. When you watch this, it'll change your life. And you go in and it's awful. Like the whole time you're just like stop. Wait, what?
Right.
Is there anything, the higher the expectation, the greater burn of the poison of unmet expectation. But usually it's unrealistic expectations that set us up for these unmet expectations.
Say that one more time. Usually it's unrealistic.
Yes, it's the unrealistic expectations that set us up for the unmet expectations.
So good.
This happens in marriage all the time. I talked to a couple 2 years ago that she just up and moved out with 2 kids in the middle of the day. And now here they are talking to me because they came across me and they never talked about anything yet. He's basically like, why did you guys leave? They've been married for 7 years.
Oh, wow.
And they had 2 little boys, and she just left. And I asked their stories, and basically she thought that being a wife meant that you take care of the house and the kids and cook a good meal and pay all these bills. And she did all that stuff faithfully. And he thought being a good husband meant that you work every day and you bring home the check and hand it to your wife. And like, that's it, right? He's doing that faithfully. They were both missing a couple of key components in what it is to be a husband or a wife. But the point is that with her, the expectation of what he should do over the course of years depleted her. She was so depleted. Her expectations were unmet. But from the beginning, they were unrealistic.
Right.
Because she thought he would know to do these 2 or 3 things. He just thought, I work 60 hours a week and hand you the check. Like,
right.
Isn't that what a good man? Well, but here's the deal. The poison of unmet expectations are caused by unrealistic expectations. But all along, all we need to do is do a better job of communicating expectations.
Yes.
So that's a game changer. It's a real game changer when a person can get rid of the poison of unmet expectations. Whew, it's a monkey off the back.
They talk a lot. I've, throughout my career, taken different, trainings and things. And I remember when I was working for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, one of the training programs I went through, they said that if you're having a team member or employee that is not meeting your expectations, 90% of the problem is you, and only 10% falls with the individual, generally speaking. And I think that's a great point to think about. Yes, there are times that you will clearly convey your expectations, and they can be realistic, and sometimes there's still a disconnect there, and something just isn't working. But more often than not, it really is a matter of communication, or failing to communicate clearly what your expectations are. We operate under a lot of assumptions. We assume that people know what we're thinking. We assume that people know what we want. People aren't mind readers. And so that's a fantastic point, that, it really is so much about that clear communication. I just love that. Yeah.
But that requires vulnerability.
It does.
It always feels awkward to tell someone, hey, I need you to do this for me. Like, that doesn't sound very powerful to say that.
Right.
It just doesn't.
Right.
You want them to just magically do it and then feel good.
Right. Yeah. So it's hard to believe, but we're coming up to the end of our hour together. Anything else that you would like to share with people? Any additional words of wisdom, or parting thoughts?
I tell you, I firmly believe that our lives can be dramatically changed by just one conversation. And I just encourage people that we all have that person in our life that we can have that conversation with. Anxiety is through the roof right now in the world. And for so many people, we internalize stuff, but we could be one conversation away from a dramatic shift in our occupation life, personal life, our marriage, our kids. But the question becomes, will we simply be vulnerable enough to just have a conversation with a human being? Just have that awkward, like, I don't even know what to say, but I just feel like this, and it sounds weird, but this is how I'm feeling. And just let some friend speak into your life and shed some light on the darkness you're feeling.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, Mark. Really, really enjoyed this conversation. I will put links to your website and podcast, anything else, in the video description. But where can people find you? Where should they look for you?
Yeah, the website is markdelaney.me.
Okay. All right. Great. Again, thank you so much. I sincerely appreciate it. And I'm wishing you and your family all the best.
Thank you.